Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. So in this lecture we will discuss the salivary glands, the diseases of the different salivary glands. So there are major salivary glands and the major and the minor salivary gland. So the first we will discuss the major salivary glands. So first we will discuss the submandibular gland. We will discuss the surgical anatomy, the ectopic sites of the salivary tissues, the infections, the duct obstructions, tumors, and the excision of the submandibular gland. So all these surgical anatomy, they are very important when you are talking about the submandibular glands. Then the infection, they are very important. The ductal obstruction is the most common disease of the submandibular glands. Then obviously we'll discuss the tumors, and lastly, so how we excise the submandibular gland. So first we'll go through the surgical anatomy. So we take an example or scenario of a patient, a 45 years old teacher presented with the left submandibular gland swelling for the last 6 months. The swelling increase in size during mealtime and become painful. On examination, the swelling is firm in consistency, mild, tender, non-fluctuant, non-transluminable, and bimanually palpable. So the excision of the submandibular gland was planned. So what are the nerves vulnerable during operation? This is very important when you are dealing with the surgery of this region. So there are very important nerves which are present in the bed of the submandibular glands, and certain nerves they are over the glands. So the lingual nerve is one of the most important that can be vulnerable during the operation. Then the hypoglossal nerve and the glossopharyngeal nerves and the marginal mandibular branch, which is the branch of the fascia which lies here. So when you make an incision here, so initially it is more vulnerable. So which duct is ligated? So the duct is in the submandibular gland is the Warthen's duct. So this Warthen duct is important because it drains the submandibular gland as well as the sublingual glands. They are drained in the duct. So which muscles are related to the gland? So gland is highly related with the mylohyoid muscles. So gland has two parts. One is the superficial part and other is the deep part. So the superficial part is below the mylohyoid muscle and the deep part is behind the mylohyoid muscles, which structures form the capsule of the gland. So the investing layer of the cervical fascia which form the capsule of the gland, where the duct opens in the floor of the mouth. So it opens to the side of the open in the papilla. So in the floor of the tongue, on one side, so you find there is the opening of these floors. Which artery and vein are related to the gland? So the facial artery and the vein, they are important. So here it lies the facial artery and vein. So the submandibular gland is lying here. So the one nerve is superficial, the marginal mandibular branch is vulnerable, then in deeper to the sublingual and the hypoglossal nerve, they are important when you perform the excision of this area. So here you can see this is the submandibular gland and it shows the deep part and it is the superficial part, and this is the marginal branch and this is the facial vein and this is the facial artery of this gland, and here is the duct which opens into the, this is the opening of the duct, and this duct has a relationship with the lingual nerve. They are important. Again, in this diagram, we can see there is a anterior belly of the digastric, and this is the submandibular gland, and it is the superficial part, and this is the deeper part. And there is a hyoglossus muscle, and this is the genioglossus muscle, and this is small sublingual gland, and this is the mylohyoid muscle, which is very important for the landmark. The submandibular glands are paired salivary glands that lie below the mandible on either side. They consist of larger superficial, smaller deep lobe, as we have discussed, that are continuous around the posterior border of the mylohyoid muscle. The important anatomical relationship include the anterior facial vein running over the surface of the gland and the facial artery. The deep part of the gland lies on the hyoglossus muscles, closely related to the lingual nerve and inferior to the hypoglossal nerve. The gland is surrounded by a well-defined capsule that is derived from the deep cervical fascia, which splits it to enclose it. The gland is drained by a single mandibular duct, that is the Wharton's duct, that emerges from its deep surface and runs in the space between the hyoglossus and the mylohyoid muscle. It drains into the anterior floor of the mouth at the sublingual papilla. There are several lymph nodes immediately adjacent and sometimes within the superficial part of the gland. So these are the important anatomical relationship of the submandibular glands. The lingual nerve is very important, hypoglossal nerve, the anterior facial vein, the facial artery, and marginal mandibular branch of the facial nerve. So in the exam, you may be asked about these important structure which has a very important relationship with the submandibular gland. They are important when you are excising the submandibular gland for the disease process. Now there are certain ectopic or the aberrant salivary gland tissues. The most common ectopic salivary tissue is the Stephan bone cyst. So it looks like this Stephan bone cyst. This presents as a asymptomatic, clearly demarcated radiolucency of the angle of the mandible, characteristically below the inferior dental neurovascular bundle. Here is the neurovascular bundle is present. It is formed by the invagination into the bone on the lingual aspect of the mandible of an ectopic lobe of the juxtaposed submandibular gland. So majority cases they are asymptomatic and there is no need of any treatment. Now comes a very important disease, the inflammatory disorder, and this is due to the paramyxovirus. So we take an example scenario of a 5 years old child presented with a painful swelling in the right submandibular gland for the last 3 days. He has fever and body aches. On examination, the swelling is tender and local temperature is raised. His younger sister also develops such condition after a few days later. So this is very important. The younger sister also got this infection, so it is the contagious disease. So it is the viral infection. So what is the most probable cause of this disorder? So this is the paramyxovirus, that is the measles. So why this system develops similar? Because this infection is the contagious. It can occur into the others. So if the child has some sort of this mumps, so this is the mumps which cause the inflammation of the submandibular gland. So if this child is school going, he or she should be abstained from the school. So will be isolation of the child. Otherwise, the other child may can get in the home. The smaller children or the other they can get this infection. So what is the management of this child? So the rest is important. The nutrition of the patient, the hydration of the patient, and sometimes the antibiotic is for the super added infection needed. Otherwise, there is no antibiotic needed because it is the viral infection. There are certain conditions of the infection of the submental gland. So this condition is called silodenitis. So this silodenitis may be acute and it may be chronic and it may be acute on chronic. So acute submandibular silodenitis. So the paramyxovirus, as we have discussed, mumps is the viral illness of the salivary gland that usually produce parotitis. So this is commonly involve the parotid gland, as we have discussed in the previous lecture. The submandibular glands are occasionally involved, causing the painful, tender, swollen gland. Other viral infections of the submandibular glands are extremely rare. The bacterial salinitis is more common than the viral salinitis and occurs secondary to obstruction. So the main causative mechanism here is the obstruction. The following infection, and despite control of the acute symptoms with antibiotics, the gland frequently becomes chronically inflamed and requires formal excisions. The chronic submandibular Silenitis is when the repeated attacks of the acute has occurred, it becomes the chronic. So the obstruction and the trauma. A 40 years old shopkeeper presented with the left submandibular gland swelling for 6 months. The swelling increases in size during the mealtime and becomes painful. On examination, the swelling is firm in consistency, mild, tender, non-fluctuant, non-transmissible, and bimanual pattern. What is the most likely diagnosis? So the usually cause is the stone in the duct. What is the cause of this disorder? Again, the infection it may be due to the organism which are present in the oral cavity. How will you investigate these patients? So we will discuss in detail what investigations are needed in the patient and what complication can occur if not treated and what are the surgical options. So all these questions we will answer the questions. So here is you can see the stone which is visible, the white stone is visible in the floor of the mouth. So the patient present with the swelling in the submandibular region and it is increased in size during the meal time. So this is also called the meal, meal syndrome. And other it is radiopaque. So when you get the radiograph of the floor of the mouth, occlusal view, you can see the radiopaque a stone lying here. So the treatment are options if it is present in the region of the and palpable in the floor of mouth, you can make just an incision and remove it. And cylindroscopy is important, so Darmia basket is used to remove the stones. And now the shock wave lithotripsy, so it can break the largest stone in the smaller one and then they can be removed. The most common cause of the obstruction within the submandibular gland is the stone formation within the gland and its associated duct system. 80% of all the slidey stones occur in the submandibular gland because of their secretions are highly viscous. 80% of submandibular glands are radiopaque and can be identified on the plain radiograph as you have seen. So regarding the clinical feature, patient usually present with the acute painful swelling in the region of the submandibular gland precipitated by the eating. The swelling occurs rapidly, often resolves spontaneously 1 to 2 hours after meal is completed. The classical picture occurs when the stone causes complete obstruction, usually at the opening of the submandibular duct. So the more frequently the stone causes only partial obstruction when it lies within the hilum of the gland and within the duct in the floor of the mouth. In such circumstances, symptoms are more infrequent, producing minimal discomfort and swelling, not confined to the meal times. Clinical examination reveal an enlarged, firm submandibular gland, tender on by manual examination. Pus may be visible, draining from the Sublingual papilla, the consequences of the chronic and non-specific bacterial infections. Now the management, if the stone is lying within the submandibular duct and floor of the mouth, anterior to the point at which the duct crosses the lingual nerve, second molar region, the stone can be removed by incising longitudinal over the duct. Once the stone has been delivered, the wall of the duct should be left open to promote the free drainage of the saliva. Suturing the duct will lead to the stricture formation and the recurrence of the obstructive symptoms. So, where the stone is proximal to the lingual nerve, that is at the hilum of the gland, stone retrieval via an intraoral approach should be avoided as there is a high risk of the damage to the lingual nerve during the exploration in the posterior triangle gutter. The treatment is by simultaneous submandibular gland excision and removal of the stone and ligation of the submandibular duct under direct visions. The retrieval of the stone via an endoscopic approach or removal of the lithotripsy is gaining favor in some centers, but specialist equipment including the salivary is required. Other causes of the submandibular duct obstruction include external pressure, particularly trauma to the floor of the mouth from an overextended flange on a lower denture which impinges on the sublingual papilla, causing inflammation and subsequent strictures. So the at this moment we have discussed the very important diseases of the submandibular gland, that is the obstruction. So the very important symptom is it increase in size during the meal times. So enlarge in size. So this is due to the partial obstructions and slowly it reduces in size. And ultimately there are different options to remove the stone. So in the previous, if the stone is palpable on the floor of the mouth, you can make an incision over it and retrieve it. But if it is on the lateral side of the duct where it crosses the lingual nerve, so we cannot remove it by the longitudinal making incision because you will cut the lingual nerve on these regions. And now the latest approach is for the salidoscope, very small scope is inserted and retrieved with the Dormier bicycle. And now the lithotripsy is also used in such cases. So this is about the disease of the submandibular gland. We have discussed here